If you're using SmartSuite to organize and run your business, especially powerful as a no-code tool, well, you're probably going to get to the point where you say, how do I get information in here from other places? It's not a reality that we have just one software to run an entire organization. So of course you're going to have information living in other places that you need to bring into SmartSuite in a clear and concise way so that it's as streamlined as possible. Well, that is exactly what I'm going to be breaking down for you in this video. I will be going step by step on how you can build two various ways to get data into SmartSuite. So if that's of interest, stick around and let's get into it. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Gareth. I'm the owner here at Gap Consulting, and we make it our mission to help you get organized and automated with no-code tools. At the forefront of these no-code tools is SmartSuite, an amazing productivity and workplace management solution that allows you to build customized databases for your specific workflow and process. That was a mouthful, so if you haven't already checked it out, please be sure to start with our link below. Number one, it's going to show some love back to the channel, which we greatly appreciate. But number two, and more importantly, you will be eligible for exclusive SmartSuite swag if you choose to upgrade, having used our specific link. This is swag that SmartSuite makes available only to our viewers, so do check out that link if you don't already have a SmartSuite account. Or if you do already have a SmartSuite account, go ahead and open it up in another window and follow along with me here. Now, the first thing we have to consider is what type of imported data are we working with? I like to break the import process into one of two categories. Number one, we might be dealing with an import that doesn't happen on a regular or consistent basis, and it's dealing with a large number or a large amount of data all at once. For example, we might have an export from a third-party software tool where we download a CSV and we want to upload all that information into SmartSuite. Now, the other type that we might be dealing with is more of a continual process. Let's say, for example, that you have a third-party tool that when someone is upgraded to a qualified lead, then you want to put them into your SmartSuite account so that you can track them through the next step of a distinct process. So notice that these two things are very different. The first type is going to deal with data en masse, and it's going to be relatively succinct. We do it once, maybe we do it once a month, but it's including a large amount of data and it's not happening in an ongoing type of capacity. Now, the second type, by contrast, is happening in an ongoing capacity. At any moment in time, somebody could be accessing our third-party tool and updating that lead to be ready for the next stage, at which point we want to put that information into SmartSuite. So how can we work out these two distinctly different import types? Well, as they are very different, they have very different processes that we need to set up. Now let's start with the first one, where we are going to take a large set of data and plop it on into SmartSuite. So first, of course, we need to imagine that we have this large set of data. Now, thankfully, I've already created a CSV file for us here. And inside of this CSV file, if we expand it up, we will see that we have numbers, genders, name set, all kinds of information on these folks. What I'm really interested in looking at is importing some name, email, phone number type information. So let's take a look and see what we have. I have a given name here, a middle initial, and a surname. So these three columns, E, F, and G, I will want to import into my SmartSuite dataset. Note that I don't want to bring in all the other information. In this case, I've got street address, city, state, all kinds of information here. I don't need all of it to come into SmartSuite for my specific example. I do also want to bring in the telephone number, which I see in column S. And I also want to bring in an email address. And if I look over here, column O has email addresses as well. Now, one thing I want to point out is that for our particular data set, which by the way is some fake randomly generated data, I have headers on this information. So row 1 here has all the information I'm looking for. This is important. If you don't have this, I would recommend adding it to your CSV or whatever file you're using. It's going to make the import into SmartSuite that much sweeter, that much easier. So now that we've taken a quick look at our data and we've identified what we want to bring in, we have to make sure that we actually have those fields inside of SmartSuite. So I'm going to need a first, middle, and last name. I'm going to need a phone number, and I'm going to need an email address in SmartSuite. Here I am back in SmartSuite. I don't have anything built yet in my SmartSuite application, so let's get to work. I'm going to start by removing the fields that I do not need. Here I have fields that are default fields assigned to. I can click here, delete the field, and confirm deletion. Same thing with status. Let's delete, delete. Now let's move to due date, delete, and delete. Priority, delete, delete. And status, delete, delete. Now that I have cleaned up my data set, of course I have to keep my primary field here, but I can start adding my other fields. So let's go ahead and bring them in. Now, one of the pieces of information we need is name, so I can bring in a full name field. And inside of the full name field settings, we can toggle on the middle name so that it now includes a first, middle, and last name. Let's go ahead and add that field. Now for us, we only have middle initials, but it'll still fill in just fine. Now the next part I need is a phone number, so let's go ahead and find that. Here we go. And I'll add this field. And then lastly, we need an email address as well. So let's add that field. And now we are all set. So, of course, if we're going to be bringing in or importing data, we need a place for that data to go. So I have to make the time and take the effort of building out those fields. Now, one other thing that I need to do for our particular template is my title field here is going to be unmarked on require an entry in the field. If I require an entry in the field, because I'm not actually importing data to this field, then it's going to potentially cause problems for us. I could also choose to have this be auto-generated. And of course, when I do this, it's going to give me a little warning, and I understand that. And what I want to include might be just the full name field here. So I'll just bring in the full name, and that will become the title of the record, as well as being stored in this second field as well. All right, so now I've got my setup in SmartSuite, and I have my file all set up, which in my case is a CSV file. Now it's time to do our data import. So I'm going to come up here to my application, click on the menu drop down, and I have the option to import data. I have 4 different file types that I can bring in, CSV being one of them, but Excel import, contacts import, and a calendar import will work very similarly to what I'm about to show you with the CSV. So in my case, I'll make that selection here, and it's going to, of course, ask me, where's that CSV file once it gets up and running. So here we go. Click here to import a spreadsheet. Easy enough. I click here, and it's going to show me all the different ones I have. Mine is actually stored on my desktop, and I'll just make that selection here, and it's going to bring that file in. Here is all of the information that we had, but of course we don't need to import all of this stuff. So once we've confirmed that we have the proper file, then we can move on to the next stage and go ahead and make a selection. Now, here it's telling us what do you want to map and where do you want to map it to. So in our case, first thing we want to focus on is the given name, middle initial, and surname. So here I am in the given name, and I simply make the selection here, and I can find the full name, but within the full name, select the first name of the full name. There we go. Middle initial, similarly, inside a full name, but it's going to be mapped to the middle name. And then lastly, the surname is similarly inside of the full name, but assigned to the last name. All right. Now, I also have my title here. I don't need to actually bring this in because of the fact that on my full name field, I didn't choose to include this. It's actually trying to map this to the title record, the primary field inside of our app, which I don't want to have included. So to remove this, I just hit the trash can and it's pulled away from our import. In fact, most of these different columns from our CSV don't need to get imported. So I will actually delete them from the import just by trashing each and every one of them that I don't want to actually bring over. Now, of course, that also includes my street address, my city, my state full, my zip code, lots of information on our particular file that is not needed for our import. But we get to email address. By the way, here is a sample of the email address as found in our file. We want to map this to our email field inside of SmartSuite. Okay, next we're looking at the username. Nope, that's more superfluous data. Password, all of this again is just fake generated data. the last piece that I care about is the telephone number. So let's find it here. And the telephone number in our CSV will be mapped to our phone number field inside of SmartSuite. Make the selection. Make sure to trash the remaining fields. Oh my goodness, there's so many of them. Let's just get this on autopilot as much as possible. Fast forward here. Seriously, editors, if you want to fast forward this part, this is madness. So I didn't realize I had so many files. So there were a lot of different things I just had to trash. If you want to shorten that experience, you could, before you save your file and start uploading the import process, remove the different fields that you don't require, the different columns from your CSV. Just delete them so that you don't have to go line by line and remove them from the import. Now, once we're happy with this, we've properly mapped what we do want to bring in, we can hit next, and it's going to take us to a sample of what that's going to look like. It's telling us, hey, we are bringing in all these different records, of which there should be about 150 or so. And we're bringing in the first name, middle name, which is just an initial, last name, email, phone number. All we have to do now is hit import, and it will bring all of this information into our application. However, before I do that, I want to point out that we can also choose to update existing records. If we already had existing data in our database and we didn't want to create duplicates, then we can say, well, hey, actually, if you see something that already has a particular name or shares some certain characteristics, then I don't want you to create a new version of it and instead merge that information with the pre-existing data that lives in SmartSuite. Now, in our example, we started from scratch. We have no information in our database, so we're not worrying about updating existing records. So I'll just leave that as it is and hit import. And now it's going to take just a little bit of time to import these 150 contacts and put them into our application. Just like that, we can see that information getting filled out. And we can scroll on down to confirm that yes, we received more than 150 contacts. I asked for 250, I forgot. So 250 contacts on that import file were successfully brought in. And we can see that email, phone number, all of this is mapping up appropriately. So this is option one, solving for that time where you have a lot of data that you have to bring in all at once. But what happens if we want to bring in data in a more ongoing capacity? For example, let's say I'm tracking an application process in Airtable. So here I am inside of Airtable and I have some information here. Maybe I even have a form that's going to include my first name, my last name, my email, and my phone number. And what I want to do is actually bring this data into SmartSuite automatically when certain things happen. Maybe, for example, somebody enters data into this Airtable form. The data lives in Airtable, but I also want to send it to SmartSuite. How do we do this? This, my friends, is where we're going to bring automation into play. Now, flipping back into SmartSuite, the first thing to always look for is there a native automation possibility here inside of the tool? In order to search that, you'll click up at the top and you will come down to automations. And in here, you can look at the different triggers. Now, ideally, in the future, we will have triggers with third-party tools so that if something happens in Airtable, we can take that action and create a record in SmartSuite. You'll see that at present, as of this filming, SmartSuite is currently working on such an integration trigger with Gmail so that in the future, when a certain email is received, you can trigger an automation to take action inside of SmartSuite. However, in this particular case, you'll notice that we don't have third-party tools just yet, with the exception of doing a webhook, which is also coming soon. So to circumvent this, we can lean on third-party software for our automation needs. And in this case, I'm going to showcase how we can build something in Zapier. So flipping inside of Zapier.com, we will create a Zap. And this is simply an automated process that says when something happens in one tool, I'm going to take an action in a completely separate tool, or it could be the same tool as well. In our case, we're going to say when something happens in Airtable. So we're building what is called a Zap. And so I'm going to choose the latest Airtable integration, choose an event, and in our case, we'll say when a record is created inside of our specific base. So we choose our Airtable account. If you have multiple Airtable accounts, make sure to select the right one. And once you've validated that, continue. On the next step, we will choose the base. In our example, I called my Airtable base SmartSuite import. So I will look for it here. SmartSuite import. There it is. And we have to also choose the table. In our example, we only had the one table. So we're simply saying when a new record is created in Airtable, that will initiate this automation. Now, once we move on to the next step, what do we want to have happen? Well, we want to create that record or create a record inside of SmartSuite. So we will find SmartSuite now inside of our first action step, and I will tell it that I want to create a record. Also notice that we could find a record in SmartSuite, we can find many records, or we can update an existing record if we know the record already exists. For our example, the way that we're imagining the scenario, I will only be creating a record. So I'll make that selection here, and it's going to then ask me to validate my SmartSuite credentials. Once that's set, I will continue from here, and I will choose my SmartSuite account. We can validate SmartSuite credentials as needed, and go ahead and move on to the next step. Now, once I choose that account, I will continue on to the actual action step. Now, in order to create a record inside of SmartSuite, we of course need to tell it what solution and application we want to create the record in. So for our example, we called our solution import data example. So I find it there from a quick search, and we only have one application still called app1. So once I make that selection, it's going to ask me, okay, well, I'll create a record in that solution and application, but what do you want me to put in here? So for us, we need to bring in, number one, the email address. So this information lives in Airtable, but you'll notice that I failed to properly complete the previous step. So let's go back and do that. We need to actually test the trigger in Airtable from our initial setup. So what I'm doing right now is looking at Airtable to see if there is a new record that's been created. Of course, in our case, we haven't created one. So let's flip back into Airtable and create one. So I'll use this form, which will add a new record to my Airtable base. So I will start by giving it a name. I'll use my own name and email, and I'll just pick a fake phone number here. And we will submit that information. Now we have created a new record in Airtable, which we can validate if we go back to our actual Airtable and we see that the first, last, email, and phone number have been filled out. Now back into Zapier, we can test this again and give it a moment. It's actually looking and talking to Airtable to find the information that we just put into the system. Now that it has it, it's going to ask us, what do you want to do with it? And we can go back to our action step where we are creating that record with the associated information. So let's go back into our action setup here. Of course, we properly linked to the solution and app, but now I need to bring it in on the email address, and I'll use the email field here. Let's find it in the list. Here it is. And I'll bring in the phone number as well. And in order to bring this in, I will find, there it is. So I'm mapping the phone number that we found in Airtable in the first step, and I'm mapping it to the phone field inside of SmartSuite, similar to how we did it with the data import. Now, one thing you'll notice is that here I don't have the full name field, and that's because the full name field, given its unique field type, is not supported in the Zapier integration. So what do we do about that? Well, unfortunately, it means that if you're bringing information in through Zapier, we either can't write to that full name field, or we are going to have to update the type of data that we're collecting. So just by going and updating the field type, right now, if you notice, that particular field is the full name type, and we can't write that information there. So what if instead we just created a text field and we called it full name 2? I'll go ahead and add this field, and we can actually bring in this information, still import that data, but because of the fact that this field is a text field type, it will now be more easily recognized by Zapier. So let's flip back to Zapier, and in order to bring that information in, we need to refresh the fields so that we re-examine our connection with SmartSuite. Once we refresh the fields, we find our new field, full name 2. And here we can bring in the elements from Airtable. Let's say we wanted to bring in the first name with a space, and then we also want to include the last name. There we go. It's just that simple. First name, literally hit space on the keyboard, little space right here, and then we include that last name. Now, once we're happy with the information, we will go ahead and continue. We can test this action and flip into SmartSuite now and scroll on down to the bottom to find our 251st record added. Now you'll notice, of course, that because we added the new field, that we have it over here, and so we would have to merge this data appropriately. But the phone number came in, the email came in, and the full name was brought in into the text field as well. So there you have it, 2 different ways to bring information into SmartSuite, depending on what you're dealing with, either importing in bulk or one-off but continual data imports on a consistent basis thanks to automation. I know we went fast here. I hope you got a ton of value from it, but do leave questions you have under the video. And in the meantime, let's keep on building.